Hi, everyone. Ted Wyman here from Postmedia, and I'm joined by my colleague Danny Austin. I'm in Winnipeg, he's in Calgary, and we're here to talk about the announcement of the Canadian Football League season starting on August the 5th. That came after a vote from the Board of Governors on Monday, which is really the best news we've heard about the Canadian Football League since November, I would say, of 2019. It's been a long time coming, but really great news today. Danny, what's your perspective on what you heard today?
I think, like you said, this is one of those days where it's kind of okay if we just sort of celebrate it. I think there's been so much tension and frustration about this league and about the way it was being run and the season getting canceled in 2020. Sometimes it's okay just to be happy that good things are happening. And this is a good thing. It's the return of Canadian football. There's so many players who have just been, dying for these paychecks. So I think it's a day for celebration and a day for sort of appreciating the Canadian game.
Yeah, I talked to Wade Miller, the CEO of the Winnipeg-Bluebombers, not long ago, and I asked him, "Who are you most happy for? Is it yourself as a businessman? Is it the city of Winnipeg for having fans have something come back that they've been missing?" He said it was the players. He said they're the ones that have lost the most out of this. They haven't been able to play. They haven't been able to be normally paid, and they've had to kind of stay in football mode for almost 2 years without playing any football. You do have to be very happy for these players who a lot of them don't make a ton of money in the CFL, but it still means something to them.
Well, and as you know, if you don't play, you don't get paid in the CFL. That's the reality. So for a lot of these guys, particularly people who are supporting a family, they've had to balance at least trying to stay in some sort of football shape or at least off-season shape with finding new jobs and trying to support their family in other ways. So you're right. I think that's a huge part of it. We're all happy for the coaches, the GMs, the front office staff as well, because they want their work. But it really is the players here. And look, the players are what make the league what it is. So they can get lost in the shuffle with a lot of these talks, but they really are. They're the point, and I think they're what should make us all not just excited, but also sort of grateful for all of the efforts that have gone into bringing the league back.
Yeah, and of course, the one group that you didn't mention necessarily was the fans, and they're the people who have always been the most important thing to this league, to having it carry on for as long as it has, despite being a truly Canadian operation. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like for fans in the stands, but I don't think that they were making this vote, this yes vote to start the season, if they didn't think there was going to be some opportunity to have a limited capacity to full capacity at some point in the season. A little bit different. You're in Calgary, as I said. I'm in Winnipeg. A little bit different. The third wave has definitely took hold later in Manitoba and has been more of an issue, but there are plans in place that could result in there being some fans by August. What's the situation in Calgary? And what about around the league, that, as you're hearing, Danny, even maybe some scheduling that's going to bring games out west early, right?
Yeah, so I think we need to include the caveat that they were light on details today, and I think that's okay. They wanted to make the announcement. The schedule will come out tomorrow. I think that sort of from the moment that they initially delayed the season, they said that they were willing to host games throughout August, basically in Western Canada. Alberta is going to Alberta, Saskatchewan is going to Saskatchewan. Both of these provinces are opening up pretty quickly, so I don't think there's any question. Jason Kenney in late May, actually, our premier here, said that as soon as we hit 70% first doses, 2 weeks later, the Elks got it right, and the Stampeders can have full capacity. I don't know if the organizations themselves will proceed with that, but I think right now, it is Winnipeg's the question, but I think we can safely assume that by August, I'm not going to put a number on it, but a decent amount of capacity in Regina, Edmonton, and Calgary for sure. And that, I don't know if that's all they need, but I think it's enough to start.
So if this all works out, if it does progress towards a Grey Cup in Hamilton that's sold out, which is what they want, obviously, what do you think it means just for the very future of the CFL? Because this has been a really tumultuous time. Obviously not able to play last season, and then discussions come up about a potential merger with the XFL, about really, really drastic changes to a game that has been so traditional for so long. Does this mitigate that, or is that all talk going to come up again after the season?
I think it helps. I have no idea where the XFL merger talks are. I'm quite on record as I don't like the idea, and I think that the Canadianness of the Canadian game needs to be protected. I think that having the Grey Cup is a really unique opportunity. It will be one of the first major, possibly national festivals. So assuming that our COVID numbers are down and we have this pandemic under control, this may be the first time that a lot of people actually travel. I mean, that sounds crazy, but if we really think about it, I know a lot of people who aren't willing to travel right now, and maybe by December. So I think that you can sort of reassert your importance to the sort of the Canadian cultural and sporting fabric by hosting a Grey Cup, and I think that that's really, really important. As you said, I will be very transparent here. Part of what was fun about today was I feel like I've only been reporting on negatives about this for so long. The CFL draft just felt ridiculous to even be covering when they hadn't played in so long. So I do think that like they needed to play. I do not think that the league would have survived had we not gotten this announcement today. And I don't know in what form it survives going forward, but I think today is the first day where you can feel that hope and get that reminder of what makes it special.
Well, and you could also, be hopeful in the fact that sometimes when something's taken away from you, when you get it back, you love it even more than you did in the first place. And maybe that is going to be, a positive reaction of people to the CFL this year. There is that question, as you bring up, will people be even comfortable going and sitting in a stadium? I mean, sure, you can say we're going to be full capacity, but does that mean people are going to want to make it full capacity, even in places like Manitoba and Saskatchewan and Alberta, where it's potentially going to be possible? But for me personally, I'm soon to be double vaxxed. I think you're double vaxxed, and I think I would be fairly comfortable with the idea of sitting outside in a socially distanced manner in a stadium. A little different with the indoor arenas, but we've seen what's been going on in the NHL with the playoffs, and I mean that's just full speed ahead. So maybe we get there too sooner than later.
It's actually one of the things that I think will be interesting is even if 100% capacity is possible in Calgary and Edmonton, it might actually be smarter to start with a smaller number and get people comfortable going again, right? I mean, I think that would help. I don't know how excited I would be to sit in particularly, beat up old McMahon Stadium with 37,000 other people. But, if it's a 1/3 capacity, maybe you feel more comfortable and then you get more used to it. And I think that's what we've seen in the States. The outdoor thing, it's the biggest advantage that the CFL has over, I guess competitors or rivals. So look, other than BC, every team plays outdoors. So I think that as we look, let's treat August as what it is, but as you begin to look at Labor Day and where you'd want those bigger crowds and you'd want to be playing out east, the outdoor thing is just such a huge component for making this possible.
Well, NBC is even a retractable roof. So, I mean, it is conceivably possible there. But one thing you touched on, of course, was you talked about 37,000 fans in McMahon Stadium. Well, that doesn't happen very often anymore. Even in a place where the CFL is quite popular, it doesn't happen in BC very often, anything like that. Montreal and Toronto, clearly problem points for this league. That hasn't changed. That was a problem before the pandemic, and it's still a problem now. Do you think, Danny, that there's any discord within the league about that future that you and I were just talking about? Like, there are some organizations that want to go a certain way and others that want to go a different way.
Yes, I firmly believe that there is disagreement on that. Look, I think that a lot of what we've heard is that Toronto and Montreal are interested in exploring the American options and exploring ways to change the market and expand the market. I don't know what's going on in BC, but I mean, it's sort of the unspoken thing that I'm sure you've experienced it traveling and covering the Bombers. That stadium is just as bad as Montreal in terms of drawing in crowds for most regular season games.
Right.
So those are yeah, and they're huge markets, and they ultimately, I mean, there's more population in Toronto than there probably is in many of the other provinces combined. So that really does matter. I honestly believe that TSN needs to be a part of this conversation as well. Bell obviously owns TSN and is also a majority owner in the Argos. So we need to know they're arguably the biggest financial stakeholder in all of this. And I'd be very curious to hear what they want to see in 2022 and going forward. So I think there are a lot of things at play. It sure does seem like sort of the Prairie Province teams, and I'm not necessarily including Calgary in that, but are a little more stable and probably not as eager to to launch into a merger without, checking all the boxes and making sure it works. But yeah, it does seem like it's a Toronto Montreal taking the lead on that. I'll put it that way.
Right. And then, of course, these prairie markets may have a different view of things after being idle for so long as well. We just don't know. But either way, Danny, it sure seems like we're going to have something to cover on the field, and we're sure as heck going to have something to cover off the field, which we always do when it comes to the Canadian Football League. Never boring, that's for sure. And hopefully we can continue to do this throughout the lead up to the season and into the season, Danny. It's great to talk to you.
I'd love to keep doing it, man. Thanks so much.
All right. For Danny Austin in Calgary, I'm Ted Wyman in Winnipeg, and you've been watching us talk about the CFL for Postmedia.